Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and for the last installment of 2023's Book Trek, I am talking about Legacy by Michael J. Friedman. So, Book Trek is an annual event where we read Star Trek fiction. This year was the Summer of Trek, where for July, August, and no, it was June, July, and August, we read Star Trek fiction. And we always have a great time with it. It's a way to geek out and just kind of enjoy the summer. For me, Star Trek books have always been kind of like my version of a summer beach read. I'm winding down back into the school year now. I'm a teacher, and so I'm going to be putting Star Trek behind me for a little while and getting back into some other things. So this is going to be my last Book Trek video for the year. And you can see I'm already getting ready for spooky season. It begins in the beginning of September in my household. My kids right now, you might be able to hear them at certain points throughout this video because they are excitedly putting up Halloween decorations. So we get the stuff started pretty early in my house. Anyhow, getting back to this. So I read this in August. And Michael J. Friedman, he is a pretty prolific Star Trek writer. He has a lot of Star Trek novels out there. I've read a decent amount of them. They can be a little bit hit or miss for me. I never dislike them at all. Sometimes I feel like, he always gets the characters really well done. He always does those right, and that's incredibly important when you're writing this kind of pastiche fiction. Sometimes the plots, for me, leave a little bit to be desired. However, he did write one of my favorite Star Trek novels, which is Kahless, that looks at the ramifications of the Klingons, basically realizing that their prized history is more legend than actual history, and kind of dealing with that idea. It's a Star Trek novel. It's, I said, one of my favorites. I think it's a really good one. It could have been great, but it's nonetheless very, very good. So I always know I'm going to get something decent out of Michael J. Friedman, thankfully. And this one was originally published in, I think, 1991. And I chose this because, especially of the Strange New World show that's out, that shows Captain Christopher Pike. Of course, different actor, but here we have the original Pike on here. So I wanted to read something that dealt with Pike. And it says on here, Spock faces a deadly foe from his past. So we essentially have Spock dealing with a villain that Pike's Enterprise had to engage at some point, and now Spock is having to face this person again. So this is a novel that basically has two different storylines going on. There's an A plot, a B plot, and there's kind of a C plot as well that involves Captain Christopher Pike. The C plot is basically Pike with the Telosians, and hopefully I'm remembering to say that right. He is somebody who was irreparably maimed while trying to save people. And the Telosians have the ability to basically give him the illusion that he is whole again and that he is with this woman, Vina. Vina does exist, but she is also disfigured, although the illusion makes them both look young and beautiful and basically gives them a fulfilling life within an illusion. That was part of it came about from the original pilot from Star Trek. And then we saw an episode under Kirk's Enterprise that basically has the whole idea of Pike later on, after meeting the Telosians, becoming disfigured and then going back there. And Spock, even though he is disobeying basically orders, to bring Pike there so that he can live out a fulfilling life. So the C plot involves Pike being with the Telosians and with Vina. And that stuff is pretty well done. However, I wish that it tied more into the plot. It ends up being pretty superfluous. You could take it out entirely and it wouldn't affect anything inside the plot. So I kind of wish it actually, mattered that it was in there. It was interesting, but you didn't need the C plot at all. So the B plot ends up being, in the very beginning, we see Kirk's Enterprise. They go down to a planet that they think is pretty much lifeless, but it turns out it's not. There are these large tentacled creatures beneath the ground, and this creature comes out, attacks Spock, injects him with a poison, and then it's rolling around, makes the ground cave in, and Kirk and three, I guess you could say ensigns, basically get trapped underground. Sulu is trying to help them, and just as the Enterprise is trying to do a rescue mission to try and figure out if Kirk survived this whole thing, an admiral calls up Scotty, who is now head of the Enterprise, and orders him to directly leave that planet and head to a mining colony that is being attacked by this guy, one of those old enemies that Pike had to deal with. This mining colony is very quickly taken over, and their stuff is being stolen, and some of the people are being killed. And basically, Scotty is told, drop everything, leave Kirk there. If he's alive or not, you have to go there. And Scotty has to obey orders, so they beam up Sulu, and they all leave. And Kirk is basically trapped underground, trying to make his way out with these ensigns throughout most of the novel, and trying to figure out the past in that planet and how these creatures work. And they've basically been abandoned by the Enterprise. Meanwhile, the Enterprise, once Spock recovers enough, he's not perfect, he takes command, and they kind of come up with a plan to try and get the colony back from these guys. So overall, it was a decent novel. I had fun with it. It moved pretty swiftly. There are moments in here that you really have to just kind of accept, even though they're a little bit difficult. Like Scotty being made to drop everything, beam everybody up, and immediately leave for that colony. It doesn't take much to think that, you could just throw a rescue team down there to monitor, or, release a shuttle and have it go in synchronous orbit around where Kirk went underground to monitor for life signs, and, in case there's a signal or something like that. It's the fact that they leave everybody, they just completely leave this planet, and, whether Kirk's alive or not, becomes very difficult to accept. Now, of course, in later versions of Star Trek, you would have more of a security team. You would have buoys that you can launch. I think the original series had buoys too, basically warning buoys. So I don't know. I don't quite. It becomes difficult to buy certain aspects of the story. Friedman is trying to sell it to you as like this was the only choice, but it becomes difficult to accept that. If you can get past that stuff, we do have a pretty decent novel here that I overall enjoyed. So that is Star Trek Legacy by Michael Jan Friedman. Once again, my last book trek video for 2023. If you came along on the journey with us, thank you. It's awesome. I want to thank my co-hosts that went along with me on this. All of their links will be down below. It was great being able to see what they were reading, and also we had a nice Voxer group going. We were able to talk Star Trek and sometimes debate it. We don't always agree on some of the finer points of Trek, even though we all love it. And yeah, that's it. Until next year, when Book Trek returns. Thank you, BookTube.